Okay, so this week we pick up with vaYiqra, chapter 20, verse 18. And as is my custom, I'm going to back up and read the previous verse. But so that everybody knows, these are certainly not some kind of pornographic or some kind of thing like that. But this is adult stuff. So if you have kids that are under 12 or 13, something like that, you may want to run them out of the room. Uh, Covering the ears of kids that old is not going to go well for you. But anyway, so it's you know big people stuff. So let's just keep that in mind. Verse 17 said, "Oh, will you switch to the computer, please?" I want you guys to see this translation. It says, "And a man who takes his," to add the word "the" because it's not necessary in Hebrew, given that it's his sister. You already have the direct object. And then we don't use that word in Hebrew. Daughter of is that's why they're in the square brackets and kind of squiggly. And then it says, a man who his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother, which is, if you recall, that meant if the parents had divorced and both of them had remarried and had other kids, now you've got half sisters. So this would include that. It's not just if it has the same mother and father. And then if you notice, I've got there's a little I at the end of them. That means that what was said in the Hebrew text was an idiom. Now, that's the word you find between the square brackets right here. That's the actual words of the text, and those words are an actual idiom. And sees her, and then it has the word we say et, we pronounce it et, but it's an arrow, literally an arrow that points to something, and sees her nakedness. Now, this is not talking about, some parent saw their child naked. That has nothing to do with this. This is an idiom. And the idiom, which is why these are between the eyes, because that stands for idiom, here's what it means: and has sex with her. So when it says and sees her nakedness, what they actually mean by that is and has sex with her. So when a man who takes his sister, the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother, and has sex with her, and she has sex with him. This is the idiom. And you shall see, arrow, nakedness, he. Now, I failed to mention this last week. My wife pointed it out to me, so I should mention it this week. This means she was willing. He saw her nakedness and she saw his nakedness. This was not a rape. These two are willing participants. Then it says it is reprehensible. And that's a really important word here because it's not the actual Hebrew word, but it's a good, and will cut off they to eyes, children, peoples. That's an idiom. And what it means is between the eyes, they will be excommunicated. So, and will cut off they to eyes, children, people means they will be excommunicated. Then we have another idiom, nakedness, sister, he uncovered. So that says what that means is because they had sex. And then that's followed by another idiom, guilt he bear. So, which probably that's a mistake on the Masoretic text. It's probably guilt they bear because they put a vav at the end of the word. In the Masoretic text, if it puts the dagesh above the vav, that's he. And if they put the vav, that's they. So it amounts to, in this case, is probably they put the little polka dot in the wrong place. It doesn't really matter whether it's going to have the same effect. They are punished for their guilt. That's what guilty bear, or guilt they bear. They are punished for their guilt. So the translation, in a way you can understand exactly what the writer meant, goes this way. And a man who takes his sister, the daughter of his father and the daughter of his mother, and has sex with her, and she has sex with him, it is reprehensible. They will be excommunicated because they had sex. They are punished for their guilt. Okay, let's come back to me now. All right. So the idioms, if you recall from last week, they've been reworded in this verse, and that's done just to break up the monotony. How do I know that? I've told you guys this before. If you want to understand the grammar of the Torah, read Casuto. It's like Umberto, Moshe, David, Casuto. It's all those words in some order. I think I got it right, but I'm not positive. But he did a commentary on Exodus and Genesis and Exodus. They're two separate books. And in fact, my commentary on Genesis is two books by itself, and then Exodus is one book. You can get them Genesis as one book, but it's a really big, thick book where I bought the two skinnier books. So anyway, he was the world's leading authority on the Eucharistic text. And somewhere later in his career, he decided to look at the Torah. And as he was translating the Torah, he realized that it had been written not only in the epic poetic style of Mesopotamia, they utilized the same grammar rules. And those are actually written down. So now the grammar rules that have been lost to Judaism for well over 2,000 years are now known. We now know what those grammar rules are. It's how we know how to recognize idioms. It's how we know that saying something in the singular tense or the plural tense is not terribly important. We know that saying things in the present, in the past, can be important. It's really more about uh, the gender. Almost makes no difference at all. But anyway, if you read his work, you'll get a much better explanation of how I know this stuff. And it's really, really well done. But that word reprehensible, let's go back and look at that. It's the word chesed. And chesed is an eager and ardent desire by which someone is led. It is spoken of love, desire, passion for someone, right? And so here's the thing that it surprises me how many Jews don't know this, but virtually every Hebrew verb has a positive and a negative. I can't, off the top of my head, think of one that doesn't. So, barach, we think of that as bless, but it's also to curse. And in this case, chesed, where it's an eager and ardent desire, this is a perverted version of an eager and ardent desire. For instance, that guy that shot a president because he had this eager and ardent desire for a movie star, that's pretty perverted, right? So it's why they use this word detestable, because it's not just that it's the opposite, it's the intensified opposite of what the word means in the positive. Anyway, so that's why they'll use that, because they could have just said this is a terrible thing or an ugly thing, but they wanted to get across, the writer wanted to get across the point that this is really, really bad. This is so awful. I'm going to use the greatest word we have for love in the negative. You follow? I hope you understand that. Okay, so let's get going with verse 18. Very, very literal English, it would say, and man that he lie down, woman menstruous, and uncover nakedness, fountain her, uncover her, and she uncover her, fountain bloods her, and will cut off they both them from midst people. So here we go. So we have Veish, asher yishkav, and a man that lies down with is to lay down. The primary stock has the power of bending, inclining oneself to lay oneself down, right? It's used idiomatically here and kind of literally at the same time. So it's et isha, so a man who lays down with a woman. And this is the word that's more commonly used of a married woman, but it's also used of unmarried women. It's used of very young women, but they're just hitting that marrying age, not used of girls that are too young for marriage. And of course, that changes over time, but generally speaking, it's between 18 and 20. You'll see people start using that word of a woman of that age. And then it says dava, which is menstruous, and that's of that time of the month. For those of you who maybe somehow don't know what that word means, then it's vaYiqra. And so that's to uncover, it's to make naked. And of course, that word's used in a lot of ways. If you are a bald-headed man, they're going to use this word. You're uncovered. You have no covering. And there's something in the New Testament where Shaul is talking about. In English, it says something along, and I don't remember English real well. I read it in Greek, so I'm having trouble remembering the English. But it was something like, for it's a shame for a woman to be covered, and don't you know a man ought to have short hair or something like that. I don't remember. But that is so unbelievably, so horribly translated. He's saying that the hair is the covering. And he's saying that if the woman, because he talks about it's as if her head's been shaved. We're talking about baldness here. We're talking about vaYiqra or gila. You don't really have to have the bob there to indicate and. Well, I don't know. I don't remember the sentence, but it's something along those lines. So it's a baldness. It's of a land that has no trees. It's uncovered. It's bald. It has no grass. It's a desert. It's uncovered. It's right. Anyway, so it's used in a lot of different ways. And it says et ervata. And so that et is the pointer. And then it says ervata. So we're back to the nakedness thing. And then it says et mekora. So it's not just that she's being uncovered physically, but this is the word for fountain, and it's her fountain has been uncovered. Because the Torah says that, she's supposed to do something to catch all that stuff. And so if sex is happening at this point, her fountain is uncovered. So she's broken a law. Then it says, He'era, so her fountain is uncovered. Then it says, Vehi, and she, Gilta, so that's the uncovered word again. Et Mekor, the fountain. Dameha, so it's a dam, that's blood. So it's blood in plural. And then it's Venichretu, and will cut off they. Shenechem, both of them. Mikarev, from the midst, from the interior, from the middle, from among, we could say it that way, amam, the peoples. So our translation's pretty straightforward. And a man, and it's an idiom, he lie down. So, and a man who has sex with a menstruating woman uncovers her nakedness, that's having sex, and uncovers her flowing blood, her fountain. And she willingly, and I have that in the squiggly letter, the italicized letters, because I'm adding that there because the way it's written, we know this is willing on her part. Willingly uncovers the flowing of her blood. They both will be excommunicated. They both will be cut off from the midst of the people. We've established what that means. It could be argued by some that die he die is to be not just excommunicated from among the people, but that's where you'd be kicked out of the land. And they'll be cut off from the people means, well, they can stay in the land of Israel, but they just can't hang around with their family. No, we've already gone through the verses in this chapter that show us that these two things mean exactly the same thing, if you recall, and it's to be cut off. I think that the one thing that could be argued that I would agree with, and or wouldn't argue against anyway, would be the idea that die he die is that not only are they cut off from their family, their friends, their people, their land, but they're cut off from their God. And perhaps the reason why it just goes down to excommunicate instead of, the wording is less intense, because one, you have die, he die, and the other one, forget how they say that. Cut off. Yeah, they're using the words cut off. It could be argued that the one means that they're cut off from everybody and God, and the other one, they're cut off from everybody but God. And I don't know that I would argue against it, but according to the verses, and I don't remember which two they were, or it was three, I think, but it shows us that these two mean exactly the same thing. So I think that it's the reason why we have these different idioms, and the reason why these idioms change here and there is more about breaking up the monotony. That was a very important thing in the epic poetic style for which this text was written. It was more important to break it up than it was the verbiage used. Okay, 19. Again, in the real super literal English. And nakedness sister mother you, and sister father you, not nakedness for close family member, he uncover her guilt, they he bear they. Or they it bear they. You could say it either way. In Hebrew it means the same thing. So the ervat, and so now we have the nakedness word. Achot, so it's the nakedness of the sister. Imcha, of your mother. So it's summing up the previous verse. Probably, I forgot to look at it this morning, but it's probably the same verse, right? This is just, we break them up because of our problem with run-on sentences. Hebrew didn't have that problem. So they tended to have very long sentences, and this is probably part of the same sentence, but it could be a separate sentence summing up the previous, but we're still on the exact same subject. So we had the nakedness of the sister, imcha, of your mother, va'ochat, and the sister, avicha, of your father. Sister of your mother or your. And did I say that right? Let me get. Well, oh yeah. So this is your aunt on either side, whether it's your father's aunt or your mother's aunt. No, your aunt on your father's side or your aunt on your mother's side. Golly, I'm so confused. All right, so we did father you, and then lo te gale. That's the nakedness word. It's broken up strangely, so we pronounce it differently, but it's of the nakedness. Ki, which is for because, et she'ero, because this is close family. So first off, it's not your immediate family. That's a no-no. And now it's your close family. You can't do that either. Era, and uncover ovonam. So if you've done this, if two people have done this, the niece or the nephew and the aunt, if they've done that, ovonam, they're guilty. There's all this stuff that they say in these dictionaries and stuff about, it's perversity, it's depravity, it's depraved, it's a crime, it's a sin. And that just means that they're guilty. They've committed a sin. They're guilty, but this word means guilty. Then it's yisau, from asa, to lift up, to bear up. So they bear their guilt. Remember, that's an idiom. Is that going? Yeah, that's going to be it. So the translation, and do not have sex with, do not uncover the nakedness of, do not have sex with your mother's sister. So, and I have in those little thingies, the square brackets, your maternal aunt, and or your father's sister, your fraternal aunt, because if close family members have sex with each other, if both family members are uncovered, those who do so are punished for their guilt. That's the meaning of the idiom. The idiom was guilt they, he bear they. So those who do so are punished for their guilt. Okay, then moving on to verse 20, and man that he lie down, sister he, nakedness, uncle he, uncover, sin they, he bear they, childless, he die they. So we have the ish asher yishkav. Now this is said an awful lot in this chapter. So a man who lies down with, then it says et, which is the pointer, dodato, his aunt. The ervat, it's for the nakedness. Dodo, like the dodo bird, dodo, D-O-D-O, dodo. Uncle, his uncle. Gila is uncovered. Het-am, so there's your word for sin. They've committed a sin. And it's not a wandering from the path or shooting an arrow and missing the mark. That's all so nonsensical. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4, every Jew, I know this is a Christian thing, or thought of as a Christian thing, but every Jew needs to memorize this verse. You need this verse to protect yourself from the Christians. Let me put it that way. And every Christian, you need to learn this verse so you pull your head out of the clouds. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. Everyone who commits sin is also in rebellion of the Torah, because sin is Torah rebellion. That's it. Plain and simple. Sin is not a man's hair. If he puts his finger here on the crease of his ear and his hair touches the top of his finger, he is not committing a sin. If his hair is really, really long like mine, he is not committing a sin. That is not a sin. If he's smoking, he's cussing, he's drinking, that is not a sin. If he's drinking to excess, now that is a sin. Why? Because the Torah forbids that excess. To do that which is opposed to the Torah, or not to do that which is commanded by the Torah. That's what sin is and what sin is not. Whatever the Torah says is a sin, if it says do it and you don't, you have committed a sin. If it says don't do it and you do, you have committed a sin. Pure and simple. That is the whole sum total of what sin is and what sin is not. And the man who wrote this gave us Jews the Mishnah. He's the man who wrote the Mishnah. Yeah, he also wrote in the New Testament. Most Jews don't know that. Yisa'u. For that matter, I think most Christians don't know that either. And bear they, so that's your asa, lifting up, so they're going to bear, obviously, their guilt. Aririm. Ooh, they didn't go there. I thought they were going to go to guilt, but they said childless. You're going to be childless. Yamuto, he die they. So we're back to the die he die, or he die they. It's exactly the same thing. So our translation: a man who has sex, he lied down. A man who has sex with his aunt has sex with his uncle's wife. They have committed Torah rebellion. They are punished for their guilt. They are excommunicated. Oh no, it says they're I just realized that. It says that their excommunication will be desolate. So, aririm, solitary, desolate, hence void of offspring. And so it doesn't actually say that they're without offspring. It's saying that their punishment is going to be total desolation, which is why I wouldn't argue against the die he die being you're also cut off from God, where the other one maybe not, because I think that would be a better explanation of why they went back to die he die here, although it could just be monotony, because that's a very important thing in the Hebrew grammar rules. Okay, now we're going to look at, where am I? Verse 21. And man that he took wife, brother his, menstruous, she nakedness, brother his, uncovered, childless be they, or probably going to be the same word. Ve'ish asher yikach, and we've had this before. So a man who takes a woman as a wife, that's to take. He takes yikach. The word for take is just kach, and then yikach is he takes. So he takes et eshet. He takes a wife. Achiv, his brother's wife. We've already had something about that in this same chapter, I think. This is his brother, could be his stepbrother. Nida, that's the normal word for menstruous. Seemed like we used a different word last time, but Nida, the Torah has a book called Nida, and it has all the laws and the rights and the wrongs and the things that you do and don't do, specifically on this one subject. And that's actually the name of the book. So he, which means she, ervat, so there's your nakedness word, achiv, his brother, well, his brothers, gila, it is uncovered. So that's the nakedness. Aririm. I thought it'd be the same word. Solitary, desolate. Yehu, they will be. So a man who takes the wife of his brother and has sex with her, it, having sex with his brother's wife, that is the it, is as impure as the menstrual flow of a woman. That reminds me of what said in the, I think it's in the New Testament letters. It talks about their righteousness is as filthy rags. Wonder where he got that idea. Could be right here. It is pure as the menstrual flow of a woman. They, the adulterers here, because this is the wife of his brother, will be desolate. So you can say they'll be childless, but that's not actually what's being said. It can be interpreted that way, but I would really hesitate to go there because what do you do when one of them, a couple like that does have a child? But in this case, it doesn't go to the die he die thing. It just says that they're going to be desolate. And I think you could connect that to not only are you cut off from your family and your people and your nation, and perhaps even your God, which actually, for sure, even your God. Um, you also have to live with what you've done to your family. That I would think would be, if being separated from God isn't desolate enough, knowing why you're there and what you did to get yourself there, that's total desolation there. I really think that's the idea we're supposed to get from that. Okay, so now we're looking at 22. In guard you all ordinances my, and all judgments my, and do them with them, and not shall vomit you the land that I bring you there to dwell in her. Thank God we're off of this for at least a little while. Ushimartem, so shamar is your basic word. That's guard, and this is and guard you, because that's how you work out a sentence in Hebrew. You learn the verb and you learn to add things to the front and to the back of it. So if you say shamar, that's guard. If you want to say and guard, you say vesh shamar. If you want to say and you guard, you could say u shamartem. Or no, u shamarta would be you, u shamartem them. So you guys are going to keep. And remember, that's that word of the man with the garden. You pluck away the bad so that the good can become stronger and grow up and be more fruitful and all that sort of stuff. And it's to make a covenant and to keep that covenant and to guard that covenant and make sure that covenant is never broken. It's all of that's within Shamar. This is Etko and all Hukotai. I don't remember if we've had this word at least in a while. That's ordinance. It's in plural, ordinance says, and it ends in the I sound, which means this is God speaking. He's saying my ordinances. It's really easy to pass off man's ordinances, but this is God speaking and saying, keep my ordinances. That which is established or defined, spoken always of a single law or ordinance, which I've told you already about that. So we have had this word. I've told you that's nonsense. It's spoken of many ordinances, but I think they're talking about it's spoken of one at a time, which would make sense if that's what they mean. I don't really know what they meant. That was written in the 1850s, and the guy didn't make it to my lifetime, so I could ask him. So anyway, uh, so these are their laws, but they're also practices and customs. And so, what would God be talking about? Well, the feasts. God said those are my feasts. God said that. They're not the feast of the Jews, as the New Testament calls them. Why would the New Testament do that? Well, because of the time of the New Testament, the only people keeping God's feast were the Jews. So they were just calling them the Jews' feast, but they're not the Jews' feast. They are God's feasts. So when the Catholics came along and started their little thing after Constantine won his war, of course, they decided that they didn't want to follow God's feasts. They didn't want to keep his ordinances, his practices, his customs. They didn't want to do that. So they took all of the ordinances and the feasts and the customs from the pagans, the idol worshippers, and to this day follow after that and completely reject God's customs. And here he is, God saying, keep my customs, all of them. It says, Ve'et kol mishpatai, and my judgments. In the mishpatai, the mishpat, those are the actual laws. Thou shalt not. More than just the 10 categories. If you've listened to me amount of time, you know that it should not be translated 10 commandments. It's not even the right word. The word is devarim, aseret devarim. That's not 10 commandments. That's 10 words. What do you mean by words? Well, if you're translating that Hebrew text into English, it should say 10 categories. And the mishpatai, God's judgments, those are broken up within the categories. You have a certain number of laws that are for category 1, that God is our God. Category 2, 3, 4, that you keep the Shabbat. You've got laws for that. That you shall not steal. There's a bunch that goes under that. You shall not kill. There's a bunch that go under that. God's saying all of these things. You gotta keep all of that. The customs. You got to keep the culture. You got to keep the laws that are developed within those 10 categories. And then it says, va'asitim, and do them. Yeah, you got to be a doer of the law, not just a hearer only. Some of you Christians will know what I'm talking about when I say that. At least you should. Otam velo taki. So it's with them, speaking of the laws, and not shall vomit. Taki. That's what you think of. It's to throw up. Echem, that'd be you. Ha aretz. And the land will not spit you out. The land will throw you up if you don't live by God's laws. God said that, I didn't. Then it says, Asher ani mevi, that I, remember this is God talking, that I bring. It's bo, I mean, that's the word to come, to go, to bring, to go on your own. I mean, the way it's put together, we know it's bring. And so it's so the land that I bring, Echem, you, Shama, that I bring you there, La Shevet, to dwell. I'm going to bring you to this land to live in. You got to keep my ordinances. And if you don't, that land is going to spit you out. The Ba, which is in her. So our translation, and if you will guard all of my ordinances and all of my judgments and execute them, do them, the land that I bring you to will not vomit you out, and you will do well in it. Has the land of Israel ever vomited out the Jews? Yes, more than once. And this is after they've been in captivity for the 430 years in Egypt. This is when this came about. This is when they're hearing this for the first time as a people. And lo and behold, they stopped following the Torah and wound up in Persia, slaves again. So then you get to the first century CE, and by the year 70, the land spit them out again. And our temple was destroyed. We were kicked out from our land. Our people were either killed or enslaved. The land spit us out. Can it happen again? Yes. What about the Hitler thing, Rob? Well, they weren't in the land. So the land did not spit them out, thus they wound up with Hitler. No, that's not one you can attribute to that. Although they were not in their land because it had, in fact, spit them out. Could it happen again? Absolutely. I hope not. But absolutely it can. Because that's what it takes for the Jews to be able to stay in their land. Okay, so it says, and not you shall walk in statutes the nations that I send from faces you, for all these made they and sickened in them. Honestly, I think I could leave it that way and you guys could figure that one out. But we'll talk about it. Yes, we have plenty of time. Velo telchu, and do not walk. This is halach, is your root word, to go, to walk. It sets up boundaries, and the boundaries are the ordinances and the laws, the Torah as a whole. All of that falls under the category of Torah. Those are your boundaries, and we use this word for that purpose. So you do not walk bechukot, in that statutes, that which is established or defined. It's laws and ordinances, practices and customs, but it says hagoi, of the nations. And this is way before the idea of Gentile. So let's not push that into this. It'd be the wrong time period. Asher ani meshalechach, that I send, to send away, to send out, because it's in PL. Mi penechem, from faces you, from you. I'm going to send them out away from you. Sounds like you're going to be crossing paths, though. Ki et kol ele asu. Ki, because, for, and then the pointer. All these were the laws and all of these things that we just talked about in chapters 18, 19, and 20 to this point. All of these awful things, the marrying the brothers and the sisters and the aunts and the uncles and all of that other, the adultery and all that stuff, all of these nations that I'm about to send away from the Jews, they've done all of these things. So you're not going to walk in their statutes. You're not going to practice their customs. You're going to live according to these laws and these statutes, and you're going to keep all of them so that you don't do this. So let's see, what's our next word? Va'akuts. It's to be weary of anything, to loathe. The primary signification is of vomiting. So it's why it's translated sickened, or to be sick. And then it says bam, for the land was sickened with them there. So it's translated, and you will not live your lives according to the customs of the nations that I will send out from before you. Because all of these, and I got in the little brackets, all of these abominations they did. And the abominations, made them vomitous. It's like God saying, it made me sick. Onkelos' vaYiqra by Drazina Wagner has this quote: The law prohibits us to imitate the heathen in any of these deeds, and is that a real word? Did I spell that right? Fortiori, to adopt them entirely. I think that is. It is distinctly said in the law that everything which idolaters consider as service to their gods and a means of approaching them is rejected and despised by God. Compare every abomination to the Lord which he hates, have they done unto their gods. So that's from Deuteronomy 12:31. The biblical term vaYiqra means abhor, abhorrent, and conveys the human sense of disgust and dislike, emotions that our Targums felt certain God could never experience. God just said, it makes me throw up, and our Targums says, that's not possible. Why would our Targums do that? Well, because he said God was not human. He had no human traits. He's beyond all of that, you know. And it was a common belief of that time period. So whoever did write the Targum, the Onkelos, it wasn't Onkelos. He was long dead by that time that book was completed. But whoever wrote it did not believe that you could. He didn't use any. It's the word for metamorphosis. Oh, I can't think of the word. I know morph is in it. Anyway, they saw God as being something far beyond. They could not get this thing through their head. If we have fingers on our hands that are attached to our forearms and to this part and to that part, and this bone is connected to that bone, and blah, blah, blah. If we have eyes and ears and nose and mouth, they can't get the idea that we have them because we are created in God's image. Does God look exactly like us? I don't know. I have no idea what God looks like. He's invisible to us. But we do know that God has hands because the Bible says he does. We do know he has eyes because the Bible says he does. He has ears to hear because the Bible says. But by the time of the first century on through, it probably went all the way into the Dark Ages, where the Jews just had this problem with talking about God in human terms. And so, since God can't be thought of as having any human emotion or any human like qualities, God couldn't possibly be saying, it made me want to throw up. But that's exactly what God just said. So, anyway, looking for the clock here. I'm going to go ahead and cut it a little short this week and save this next thing until next week. So we'll pick up with 24 next week. Shalom, shalom, guys.
The blessing, vaYiqra. Yevarecha Yahweh v'yish merecha. Ya'er Yahweh panai v'lecha v'hunecha. Yisa Yahweh panai v'lecha v'yasim lecha shalom. And in English, may Yahweh cause you to lie down so that you may rest. May he touch and caress you. May he prepare you for what is ahead. May he watch over you. May he keep you from harm. May he cause goodness to grow in you and take away the bad. May he arrange your life and cause you to flourish. May he cheer you up and gladden your heart. May he cause his light to shine through you. May he show you tenderness, favor, and love in his presence. May he show you kindness and be delicate toward you. May he show you his generosity, mercy, compassion, and desire for you as it comes forth from the depths of his soul. May he lift you out of your pit and deliver you from the things that hold you prisoner. May he draw you to his chest and cast his eyes on yours. May he show you his love and desire for you as he cradles you in his arms. May he bear your punishment and pardon you of your sin. May he take you for his bride. May he establish a foundation in you. May he place his name on your heart and mind and make your body his temple. May you be his treasure. May you always be on his mind. May he draw you near and comfort you when you are afraid. May he assure you there is nothing to fear because he is with you. May you and all that concerns you be at peace because he is your friend. Amen.